Today you are going to learn about calculating the circumference of a circle. We'll talk about circumference a little bit later on. We're going to start by talking about what a circle is and the different parts of a circle. A circle is a closed figure with all of its points equal distance from its center. And so if we look at our diagram here, all of these points that are making up the circle are the same distance away from the center. So you could imagine the center right in here. Now, there are two special segments of a circle that we are going to talk about. The first is called a radius. A radius is any segment connecting the center to a point on the circle. And so what we're going to do, we're going to sketch what a radius looks like in our circle here to the right. Again, a radius connects the center to any point on the circle. So I could start by estimating where the center is. And then if I just draw any line segment to a point on the circle, I didn't have to go in that direction. I could have gone in any direction here from the center. All right, but this is what a radius looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and label that radius. And we're going to call that R later on in the lesson, R for radius. Okay, the other segment is called a diameter. Diameter. A diameter is any segment that passes through the center and has both of its endpoints on the circle. Okay, so this time our segment's going to start and end on the circle, and it's going to have to pass through the center. So I'm going to draw in a segment that looks something like this. Okay, and this is going to be my diameter. And that'll be labeled D for diameter. Okay, and if you look at the diameter, all right, you can see here, well, the diameter is really made up of two of these radii, which is plural for radius. All right, from here to here would be a radius, and from here to here would be a radius. And so they want us to explain the relationship between the radius and the diameter of the circle. Well, we can say the diameter is twice the radius. The diameter is twice the radius. And so if we think about maybe a little formula that we could use to calculate the diameter, D, well, you would do 2 times R, which is the radius. All right. Another way of saying this is that the radius is half the diameter. And again, if we try to think of a formula for this time, if we wanted to calculate the radius r, we would have to take the diameter and divide it by 2. And so these are two useful formulas that we can use to calculate a radius or a diameter, depending upon which one we are given. And in fact, that's what I'm going to have you do in the chart underneath. In some cases, you were given the radius. In other cases, you were given the diameter. Figure out what the missing value is going to be based off of the value that they were given. Okay, now that we've had a moment to check out what radius and diameter are, now we're ready to discuss what circumference is. Circumference is the distance around a circle. The distance around a circle. Okay, and if we go back up to our diagram that we have up at the top here, okay, the circumference, I'm going to go ahead and label this all the way around. Circumference is the distance all the way around the circle. Okay, and so when we're trying to calculate what the circumference of a circle is, that's what we're trying to figure out. What is the distance around that circle? And if you have any circular object at your house, maybe like a coffee mug or something like that, and if you measured around that circle and you divide it by the diameter, you're always going to come close to the approximate value of this number, which is called pi. And this is what this symbol looks like right here. Pi is defined as the circumference of a circle divided by the diameter. For every circle, whenever you take its circumference and divide by the diameter, you will get this value of pi. Okay, pi is a number that goes on forever. It doesn't repeat. And so what we're going to do is use the approximate value of pi when we use our calculators. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our calculator out and we're going to find our pi key. And on my calculator, my pi key is right here. You might have it in a different place depending upon what calculator you have. But if we just push that key and then hit equals, there is the approximate value of pi. And we're going to write down all of the digits that we see there on the calculator. Pi is approximately 3 and 141592654. Okay, so those are the digits that we are going to use for pi. Now, there are a couple of different formulas that we're going to be able to use for circumference. Again, the circumference divided by the diameter is equal to pi. Well, how are we going to get this circumference all by itself? Well, this is technically just a one-step algebra problem. What I could do to each side is multiply both sides by the diameter. Okay, so I'll multiply by the diameter on the left side, which means I have to multiply by the diameter on the right side. And this is nice because over here on the left, these diameters will simplify with each other, and this leaves us with just the circumference. The circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. And in fact, that's the formula that we're going to use every time that they give us the diameter. If given the diameter to calculate the circumference, C equals pi times d, the diameter. Now, what if they didn't give us the diameter? What if they gave us the radius instead? Well, we need to remember from up above, we said that the diameter was equal to 2 times the radius. And so what I could do is use the same formula, but instead of using d for diameter, I could use 2r instead. And so that's going to be a formula that I'm going to use if I'm given the radius. Circumference is equal to 2 pi r. Notice both formulas have pi in it. This formula with diameter uses d. The formula with radius uses 2 times r because twice the radius is equal to the diameter. Okay, and so these are the two important formulas that we're going to need to know whenever we're trying to calculate circumference. Now that we know the two formulas for circumference, we're going to be able to use these formulas to help us answer some questions. In our first question, Bethany wanted to make a straight pathway through the center of her circular garden. She knows that the circumference of the garden is 15 pi feet. What is the length of the pathway? We have to choose the equation to use for this example. Is it c equals 2 pi r or is it c equals pi d? Well, we've got to go back and reread the question and try and pick out some of the key elements here. We're trying to get a straight pathway through the center of the circular garden. And if I were to draw a picture of that, this could be my garden. And if I draw a straight pathway through the center, well, it's going to look something like that. And this, therefore, is the diameter. And so since we're using the diameter here, we're going to end up using this formula for this example, c equals pi d. So I'm going to rewrite my formula, c equals pi d. And we're trying to figure out what the length of this pathway or the diameter is going to be. Well, in order to help us do that, we're going to have to substitute in a value that we know. And we were told right here that the circumference is 15 pi feet. And so instead of using c, I'm going to replace that value with 15 pi. 15 pi is equal to pi times d, the diameter. We're trying to figure out the value of the diameter. We've got to get the diameter all by itself. So again, this is just a one-step algebra problem. The only way that we can get the diameter by itself is if we divide by pi. And if I divide by pi on the right side of the equation to maintain equality, I have to divide by pi on the left side. Remember that pi is a number. Any number divided by itself is equal to 1. So pi divided by pi is equal to 1, leaving us with d, the diameter on the right side. 15 pi divided by pi, well, again, pi divided by pi is 1, so that's just going to leave us with 15. And so we now know that the diameter is going to be 15. So we can write out our sentence here. The pathway is 15, and it was in feet, long. Okay, the pathway is 15 feet long. Okay. In our second example, the circumference of a circle is 8 pi inches. They want to know this time, what is the radius of the circle? And so if I look at my circle here, I'm going to draw in a radius that goes from the center to any point on the circle. And since we're referencing the radius here, well, I'm going to have to use this formula, c equals 2 pi r. So again, I'm going to rewrite my formula first, c equals 2 pi r. And again, we're trying to figure out what the value of r, the radius, is. And to help us, they told us that the circumference was 8 pi inches. So I'm going to replace circumference with 8 pi, and that's equal again to 2 pi r. We've got to get r all by itself. Well, the first thing that we could do here, we could take both sides of the equation, and we could divide it by the 2. Let's divide each side by 2. Well, on the right side, 2 divided by 2 is going to equal 1, leaving us with pi times the radius. And on the left side, 8 pi divided by 2. Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so that's going to leave us with 4 pi. Okay. R still isn't all by itself. We have one more step to do here, and that's going to have to be to divide by pi. And again, pi divided by pi is 1, so on the right, this is just going to leave us with the radius. And on the left, when we do 4 pi divided by pi, that's going to leave us with 4. Again, pi divided by pi is 1. That leaves us with 4. And so now we know that the radius is 4 inches. All right, again, they use the units of inches up above there. The radius of this circle is going to be 4 inches. Now, in the last two examples, the circumference was given to us and we had to calculate either the radius or the diameter. In these next questions, we're going to be given either the radius or the diameter, and we're going to have to try to calculate the circumference ourselves. There are two ways to show circumference. One thing that you can do, you can hit the pi key, which we did earlier on our calculator. You're going to use all of those digits, and then if they ask you to round, you're going to round to a given place value. The other way is to leave your answer in terms of pi, which means that pi will be a part of the answer. Let's check out an example of what we're going to be doing. In number 3a, it says that you would like to add fringe around a circular rug. So we have a rug, we're going to put some fringe all the way around that circular rug. It's 8 feet in diameter. How much fringe do you need to buy? Then we're going to round our answer to the nearest whole number. Okay, well, we have to determine which formula are we going to use, c equals 2 pi r or c equals pi d. Well, they told us that it's 8 feet in diameter, and so I'm going to use the formula that uses diameter. So I'm going to write my equation down, my formula, c equals pi times d. And then I'm going to replace diameter with 8, because that's the value given this time. C equals pi times 8. And again, if I wanted to leave my answer in terms of pi, well, I would be done. I would just be 8 pi is the circumference, but they've asked us up here to round our answer to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to use my calculator and actually figure out what 8 times pi is. So I'm going to pull out my calculator here. I'm going to punch in 8 times pi. And I'm going to write out all of those decimals right now. So write those down on your paper as well. We have 25 and 13274,123. And now we're at the part of the question where we can round. They asked us before to round to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to say that C is approximately, not equals, but approximately. Well, right now it looks like 25. And if I check my tenths place, I have a 1, which is not enough to round us up. So I'm going to say that the circumference C is approximately 25. Okay, and so we can say here that you need about, because we